I do believe you have to align your enthusiasm with that talent and with that dream.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Coming Clean Podcast. This is your host, Peter O. Estévez. And today we have an incredible guest. She's a three-time Daytime Emmy-award winner. She's a media personality, an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, a speaker, and the executive producer and host of the TV show SuperLatina. None other than Gaby Natale. Hello, Gaby.
Hello,
welcome to
Peter. How are you? So beautiful to connect with you in this beautiful day. I already know this is going to be a wonderful interview.
Well, I am excited to have you. You know, you have a slew of accolades, but the reality is the life has not always been like that. There was one time when you were in your apartment or home in Argentina with your boyfriend, now husband, and you were watching a TV personality, and you actually told your boyfriend at the time, not your husband, that in your next life, you wanted to be like that TV personality you were wanting to. You know, and that is such a common thing in all of us. We want to wait to our next life to do something, okay?
And I said it in such a kind of careless way. Let me give you some context here. I was a recent graduate. I was in my early 20s. I finished journalism school. I just graduated with a master's degree. And here's the thing. My timing has always been awful. So I graduated with a master's degree right at the moment when Argentina was going through the worst crisis in the past century, 20% unemployment, there was riots in the streets. It was horrible. Horrible situation in general, horrible situation to look for a new job, but that has been a story of my life. I started my business in the year 2007, right before the crisis here globally. So I know my timing is always awful. But here's the thing, if you're starting something in the pandemic, before a crisis, or in the middle of an economic downturn, don't be discouraged, because things can work out in the long term anyway. So that's what was happening to me, story of my life. Horrible timing. I just graduated with a master's degree in journalism, and I had spent 18 months knocking on doors, and nobody would even take me for an unpaid internship. I was eager to do whatever it took to get that first foot on the door, you know, I wanted to make it work. And in media, it's so hard to break in. And at some point, when you start knocking on doors and you don't see any response, you make a mistake, Peter, and everybody who's been unemployed maybe identifies with it. You start to believe that this lack of response, Peter, that we receive from the world, nobody's calling us, nobody's hiring us, and we start to believe mistakenly that this is a reflection of who we are as a professional, or of who we are as a person. And that was what was happening to me when that happened. I was checking on the TV, feeling really low. And then what happened next was that I said that phrase, you know, hey, I'm having such a great time watching this clip, watching this TV show. And I told my boyfriend, who now is my husband, in my next life, I want to be like her, like this larger than life TV personality that I was seeing on TV. And he, Peter, who is somebody who loves me and knows that I was in a very low place at the time, he asked me something that changed my life. He said, Gaby, if this is something that makes you so happy, that makes you so positive, that really lights up your day, why are you going to wait for your next time to work in media?
Wow.
So that's the story that you mentioned, you know, because so many people, they are thinking about, you know, in my next life, I'm going to do this, in my next life, I'm going to do that. But we, for sure, only know we have this life.
Absolutely. And from there, 2 suitcases and didn't see your boyfriend, not husband, for a year and a half, and you end up in America. And once you end up in America, you're facing new challenges, right?
We did long distance. We saw each other every 3 months, but we were apart in long distance for 1 year and 1 month. And I think that was the hardest part of all.
Wow. Wow. But now you're faced with new challenges. And I want to talk about your TED Talk. I want to talk about, because in your TED Talk, you describe a lot of the challenges that the Latino community at large faces across the world. Okay. And it really struck me when you cited Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
It really struck me. And I want to talk about that, because what does Gaby Natale, now a personality, a worldwide personality, has in common with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Well, I didn't think they had that much in common. But here's the thing, because he's started in bodybuilding and I don't exercise, and he's an action movie star that I don't watch action movies. I didn't think we had that much in general. But when I arrived in the United States, I realized that people mistakenly assumed that I was uneducated only because English happened to be my second language. And that was awful. Like, I'm not dumb, I'm not uneducated, I'm just multilingual, which is something that needs to be celebrated, not penalized. And so I started looking around and seeing who with an immigrant background is making waves. Who with an immigrant background is, in a way, having a public life, breaking barriers, delivering speeches in the public eye with a successful media career. And I couldn't see that many people. I came here 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And so the person I looked up to was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I said, like, how crazy is it that this little girl from Argentina in her 20s, before hitting a stage, before doing something, is thinking about Arnold Schwarzenegger and how he was able to, in a way, use his uniqueness as bodybuilder first and then as action movie star to then propel a career in politics and to then become the governor of California. And I said, if Arnold Schwarzenegger with that big, thick Austrian accent could do it, so can I. So in the early stages, when I first arrived in the United States, as crazy as it sounds, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger who I thought about before emceeing events in English, before doing interviews, before doing so many things that were outside my comfort zone as somebody who spoke English as a second language.
Wow, incredible. And for there, you went on to publish a book, How to Restore Our Confidence Through the Virtuous Circle. Okay. Mm-hmm. In that book, you detail seven archetypes that basically take you through that process, which I truly believe in not only in the Latin community, but in the community at large. There's always that 1% that there's somewhere the bottom of the pyramid, right? The 99%. The rest of the world that is floating around, that is looking, that is, for the most part, in what I call a survival state, not thriving, but merely surviving, existing, okay, working hard. How do we transition through those archetypes to become who we are determined to be?
So the Virtuous Circle, that book, which is also an audio book, is everything I've learned, Peter, from interviewing pioneers and super achievers from all walks of life. I have the privilege that part of my work, like you have, is talking to people that you find interesting, talking to people that you find somehow something of what they did caught your attention. And what a treat it is to talk to different people. So after talking to them and interviewing them for over 15 years, I started noticing commonalities. And those commonalities are what I named the Virtuous Circle, which have 7 archetypes. It has 7 archetypes, and I'm going to just mention them to keep it short because it's a whole book. But here's the thing. I've noticed that all of them start with what I call the dreamer archetype. The dreamer archetype is the one that allows you to visualize your dream. But you know what? Just by daydreaming and visualizing, nothing is going to happen. You need another one, which is the architect in you. The architect is the one that is going to do the planning. You need a plan, but just with ideas and plans, guess what? Nothing is going to change. So you need the third one, which is the maker. The maker is the one, Peter, that executes. Because here's the thing, how many people do you know that always have ideas, always have plans, but they never get to execute?
Yes.
A lot of people say, I have to work in my inner maker to execute. And when you execute and you start doing that thing that you want to do, here's the thing, vas a meter la pata, you're gonna make mistakes, and then you're gonna do things right as well. If you're smart, you're going to learn, you're going to perfect your craft, and you're going to become the apprentice. Always have your inner apprentice trained, because you're never going to stop using it if you want to achieve that dream. And then when whatever you learned with the apprentice and everything that you're doing also with your inner warrior, that is your perseverance, they meet an opportunity, that's your moment of achievement. And your moment of achievement is what I call the champion archetype. Wow. And here's the thing, Peter. I ask every champion that I meet, champion, what are you using your achievements for? Because so many people go through this life and they have a lot of achievements, and that's all it is, a collection of individual achievements. Wow. So what are you using your achievements for? If you're using your achievements for something bigger than yourself, you're going to become the seventh and last archetype, which is the leader, the one that inspires. And it's called the Virtuous Circle, because with your next idea, with your next project, where do you go? Back to the beginning, because the only constant in life is change.
Wow, 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 powerful, powerful, Gaby. Gaby, this kind of conversations have been rare in the Latin community. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think it is for the very first time in ever, for the very first time ever, that information, personal growth, personal development, emotional intelligence are becoming mainstream conversations. Okay, the reality is they have been democratized, digitized, okay, and demonetized. Information is readily available for anyone that wants to become somebody. Okay, we live in an information age. As a matter of fact, we live in an overabundance of information. Mm-hmm. Okay? So how does somebody discover, okay, and is able to take that dreamer into an architect, okay, into a maker, into an apprentice? How do we transition that life? If that is not something innately, we don't have the support system at home. We don't have the support system in our community. There are many things that are against us in a lot of disadvantaged communities. So how do we develop each one of those archetypes?
Well, there's a couple of things that I would like to say about that, Peter, because I do believe for anybody that comes from an underrepresented or underprivileged background, we need to think about personal growth and leadership in a different way. Because I've been in that situation where, you know, I listen to, if you can dream it, you can do it, or just do it, or do this, do that. And I believe that some people have a blind spot, because I look around and I know and I see the numbers. There is inequality in this world. There is people who, even if they put all their work, they're gonna find it harder than somebody else who
absolutely
who was born healthy, or who was born in a household or in a family that is more supportive. So first of all, I think as somebody who is in the personal development space or leadership space, coming from a community that is underrepresented, I am the first one to recognize that there is inequality in this world. So I don't want to be tone deaf telling people that it's their own fault. Sometimes they're blaming people when they cannot reach their goals, when they have not started in the same place as others. Some people start already in the finish line.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So that's something that I want to say. So I think there are two different ways to think about it. There's people who say it's like inequalities, if they don't matter, you know, you can all, if you think about it, you can reach it, and that's all you have to focus about. And there is people who say this is BS, you know, there's a lot of different situations in the world. Some people who are born rich stay rich, some people who are born poor stay poor. And I believe us, or at least me, I don't want to talk for anybody else, me as somebody who is an immigrant and who has gone through so many challenges, myself starting fresh in a new country, we have to acknowledge both. They both have to live at the same time.
Wow.
While I acknowledge that we don't all start in the same place, while I acknowledge that there's people who have more privilege than I had, I also acknowledge that there are things that I can do every day to make my life better. So I don't think they are in contradiction, they're mutually exclusive. I think we have to combine both, because if we do not combine both, this is going to be a tone-deaf conversation for so many communities. And at the same time, while I recognize that there's people who have started with more privilege than I have, at the same time, I recognize and I am thankful for the things that have happened to me. To be able to have health is being privileged. To be able to not wake up and have pain in your body is a privilege, because some people wake up and they are in pain with their body. So it's a mix of knowing that maybe you didn't start with the same privilege as other people, but at the same time, you have to be grateful for whatever you have right now in your life that will allow you to start this journey.
Wow, incredible. You said something that is key right there. You have to learn to be grateful for what you have in your life, okay? And I think in a lot of underprivileged communities, pessimism is part of our culture, is part of our generation. We focus so much on the negative part of our life that we take very little time to have a moment of gratitude. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now there is changes that have to take place in the mind in order for us to be able to exit that state of survival. Okay. And you say you got to do certain things. I think innately as immigrants, we have resources that come with us that are available. I saw my father, although we're very poor, he was a hardworking man, and he was very creative. You know, he was very resourceful because he didn't have any resources. So he had to hustle, you know, which that's what we call today entrepreneurship, right? Uh-huh. You know, my father had to hustle. He had to have a booth at the flea market. He had a side hustle all the time because his 8-to-5 job or 9-to-5 job, whatever job he had, did not give him enough to be able to provide fully for the household. So what are those strengths, or how do we find our strengths to make that mindset, to be able to help us find our own gifts?
I think one very important thing that you have to do that when you start this journey is, as I say, inner voice, whatever you have in your mind, whatever you have in your heart, inner voice over outer noise. Inner voice over outer noise, because there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be people's low expectations about who you are, what you can achieve, that's gonna come your way. But at the same time, you have to be crystal clear about what you want to do and have laser focus, so that inner voice, it's like a little fire that you're nurturing, and it can become a big fire, you know, a burning desire that you have. And that has to be so much stronger to whatever you're going to face. And also I tell people, rejection. We all face rejection. Rejection is part of the process. So don't feel like the world is against you. Don't feel like nobody's believing in you. Just know that whatever you're doing, rejection is part of the progress. Rejection is part of the process. So those are things that I have reminded myself, because I don't know if I should say fortunate or with bad luck enough to take a plane, come to this country. The day before I took a plane, I was considered in my environment a promising young woman, an intelligent woman, a hardworking young lady. I took a plane, and then I saw around how the perception changed, because I was new, because I had an accent, whatever, you fill in the blanks. So I noticed the bias. But all that happened was that I took a plane. So I had those two conflicting perceptions about myself. Who am I? The promising young woman that everybody saw in Argentina, or the newcomer who, is kind of not that smart, is kind of not that, intelligent. So because those two different perceptions of me clashed in such a short time, I only took a plane. I was the same one. I was fortunate to be able to think about how I saw myself, and so I could build, how I was going to perceive myself. And I chose not to validate the view of somebody who had low expectations about me. I chose not to validate that stereotype. And I think that is the core of someone who comes from maybe an underprivileged background, or maybe has been underestimated by somebody in their family or in their workplace, or whatever circumstances they are facing. The fact that they chose to create their own narrative about who they are, and then being able to manifest it in the world, that is the key that I have seen work for myself and for so many pioneers and super achievers that I have interviewed.
Love that. Now, Gaby, how were you able to quiet that noise? Because we do live in a society, we do live in a world that is social media crazy. We do have so many sound bites that are biased towards the successful, towards the look at me now, look the car that I'm driving. So, a lot of times, you said it earlier, some people start at the finish line. Okay, so I think, do we sometimes minimize starting small?
I always say that starting small is not the same as thinking small. You can start small and then have a great dream. But at the core of what you're saying, it's very interesting, Peter, because I do believe we have to give ourselves permission to redefine what is success for each one of us. You talk about a car. I always have a fight with my husband because he said my car is too old. My car is like 10 years old. And here's the thing, I don't get pleasure from new cars. I have to learn how they work. I already know this car that I have, all the little buttons, I know everything. So for me, the new car does not give me the excitement. I see that there's a narrative about what it means to be successful, especially in entertainment or in the personal growth and leadership spaces, that it's the same for everyone. Everyone is the private jet. Everyone is like Pitbull dancing with the girls in the yacht. I don't want girls dancing around me in the yacht. And I feel seasick when I'm at sea. So for me, maybe the definition of success, and if you follow me in social media, you're going to see me. It's standing in my backyard, watching the trees, if it's summer, being by the pool, reading a book, connecting to nature. That is fantastic for me. I don't want the yacht, the girls in the bikinis. Nothing of that is a definition of success. And I think we have to create our own definitions of success, because when we are seeing that everybody, imagine you are at the, I always like the examples with food because I like to eat, but imagine we are at the heladeria, at the ice cream store, and everybody's asking the same flavor. They all want strawberry. strawberry, first client, strawberry, second client, client number 15, strawberry. Somebody's ordering the flavor that is not their favorite. You know, if we're all eating strawberry, somebody is missing out on eating chocolate, on eating dulce de leche, on eating pistachio. So I think the definition of success has to be like those flavors in the ice cream shop. Choose the one that makes sense for you. And it might be yucky for somebody else, you know. It might be that they choose whiskey or something strange that I would never order at the coffee store, at the ice cream store, but it's your own definition.
Becky, Gabby, pardon me, you know, in the quest for us to move our generation forward, is the formal education system still doing us justice? Or should we, as a culture, as a collective, as a new generation, incline more to the personal development space?
You mean if we should do more personal development in the Latino community, or more formal education?
Yes, you know, there's almost a clash. There's a big clash. You know, what I see, and we talked about this before we got on the air, you know, in the personal development space, in the Caucasian community, in mainstream America, it's normalized. You know, I can go on social media and I'm going to see Grant Cardone. I'm going to see even Carmichael. I'm going to see Brandon Burchard. I'm going to see a slew of personal development leaders. And now the younger generation, the younger Latino, is beginning to identify themselves. Okay, and there's this mixed message about how injustice the traditional educational system is doing to a lot of people. Now, is that a mainstream? Should we continue to look at the educational system as a traditional education system, or should we begin to introduce a personal development space into the younger generation?
I think they both complement each other. I am a byproduct of both. I am somebody who went through the traditional education. I have my bachelor's in international relations and my master's in journalism. But here's the beauty. When I was 16 years old, in my home, there was a book called Your Erroneous Zones by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And that was my introduction to personal growth, personal development. And every time you come across books like that, I mean, it really depends, and you can read it your own whole life, because I remember that I got that book and I was reading it, and what I had in my mind was a bad breakup with, you know, my little boyfriend from that time. You know, if I read that book right now, it's probably going to be something completely different, how I relate to that book and which are the tools that I'm getting. But I think they both complement each other. What I do know is that probably in the future, in 10, 20, 30 years, traditional and conventional education is going to look very different than what we're seeing right now. We're already seeing people who are getting certified in, you know, programming, technology, different things, and they have, you know, a very solid career path by having this kind of certifications, while some people who spend 4 years and get in debt, you know, for hundreds of thousands sometimes, they learn something that they have a hard time applying in the world. But, you know, as Steve Jobs said, you know, sometimes you connect the dots backwards and you learn something that at the time you say, what am I going to use calligraphy for? Like he did, he took that course just for fun. And then it ended up being so useful. So I do believe we should guide ourselves by our intuition. Sometimes you feel compelled to learn something that you don't know if it's going to be useful. You're just doing it for fun. But then at the end of the day, you know, maybe it's something that is going to be pivotal for your own career, or maybe it's just something you did for fun, and that's fine as well.
Perfect. You know, you said in one of the interviews that it is a myth that talent is rare. Mm-hmm. Talent is abundant. Okay. Mm-hmm. What is rare is determination. Mm-hmm. So how do we find that determination to find that talent?
I think it's a question of alignment, because that's what I said. I said, talent is abundant. What is scarce is the determination to take that talent and to execute in an extraordinary way that talent, and also to have a commitment. So here's the thing. I do believe you have to align your enthusiasm with that talent and with that dream. When you align your enthusiasm with that project, that talent, and that dream, what you're going to find is that maybe it's not going to be so much of a sacrifice to spend so many hours doing a podcast. Maybe it would not be so much of a sacrifice going and do the training you need to become an athlete, a professional athlete. Maybe it's not going to be so hard to practice on the piano, because everything is aligned. For me, for example, I spend crazy amounts of time doing things I'm passionate about, whether it's reading, whether it's researching, whether it's having conversations that are interesting. But guess what? If I have to go to the gym, I am the first one to come up with an excuse. So it's not that I am disciplined and determined for every little thing in my life. It's that I have aligned many of the things that I have an interest and a passion for with my project.
I'm going to ask you something that is almost so common, right? What were the rituals that Gaby did when she got to America to get her to the mindset where she became the Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Latina Arnold Schwarzenegger? What were the ritual? What was it that broke that mindset that said, I'm it?
I think there's an inner knowing we all have. For example, when I went to do my interviews in events and somebody was in a stage or in the podium, or if I was doing an interview, just like something in a red carpet, and you're on the other side, sometimes there's whispers in you. And I had a whisper that said, you belong on the other side. You belong on the stage. You belong in front of the microphone. You belong doing this. You belong doing that. And I was like, no, you have to be humble. No, you don't have to be ambitious. No. And then I started to listen to that, because inside of you, you know that if you have a dream and it's planted in you, you have to listen to it and see. Of course, it's not just listen to your dream and it chips in the sofa. It's just doing the work. And there is where your dreamer and your architect and especially your maker have to come into place to execute. But I do believe that, sometimes we base our own narratives in other people's perception of us instead of our own perception. My own perception, my own whisper inside was saying, you belong in places. Why not? You belong here. You belong there. And I looked around and I said, but there's no Latina here. There's no immigrant here. There's nobody with English as a second language here. And you belong here. You belong there. It was like, yes. And I started to believe it. And then I would see it. And so I want to say something. If you're coming from, an underrepresented community, I always like to share what is a stereotype, Peter. What is a stereotype? If you think about it, a stereotype is someone else's idea about me or people like me.
Wow.
It is only an idea. It is not a fact. But Peter, if you and I start to believe that idea to be true, if we mistakenly take as a fact other people's expectations, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow.
And that's what we don't want to happen. That's why inner voice over outer noise.
I love that. I love that because my good friend Gary Kusak, who I just had on the podcast, he talks about our multi-sensory perception, right? We used to operate from 5 senses. And we never listen to that inner voice. We never listen to that intuition. We never listen to that a key feeling, that feeling that said, you deserve more, you can become more. And we allow the imposter syndrome to kick in. What I realized in my particular case, Gaby, was that I was an imposter where I was, not where I was going. I realized that I was afraid to enter whatever was awaiting me because I had believed some of the noise from somebody else.
Same thing. The whisper told you, you belong here, you belong there.
Yes. So what is next for Gaby Natale?
So a couple of things. One, there's going to be, massive, once we transition, now it's virtual, but there's going to be massive opportunities and engagements and things to keep elevating this message through motivational speeches. I am partnering with different organizations. And the beauty of it is that now it's not just corporations, but brands, Peter, who are putting attention to the Hispanic dreams, to the Hispanic consumer, to knowing that we are such a powerful force as entrepreneurs. So those are things that I'm very enthusiastic about. Of course, keep the promotion from the Virtuous Circle, my book, and also, I don't know if you're aware of it, I have my own beauty line, which I launched. As I always tell you, my timing is awful. So I launched it just 3 months before the pandemic, but it's called Welcome All Beauty. And it's for busy women who have to be camera ready and need to do it in a second or less. And it's so beautiful. It's so natural that you might be seeing it for an hour and you don't even realize it was in front of you for the whole time.
Wow.
So this is a way for me, who am so busy, to come up with times to come up with ways to reclaim my time. Because if you're a woman, you know it takes a while to get camera ready. And if you have a lot of meetings and things back to back, that hour that you spend styling your hair is an hour that you're not spending moving forward with other things. And that's why I need systems, and that's why I need to come up with solutions so that my time, our time as women, is very valuable.
Advice to a young 16-year-old woman.
I would tell her to dream big, to believe in herself, to find her own definition of success, and to know that everything she needs, it's already inside of herself. As women, as women, it happens that we look around. Here in the US, we've never seen a female president. In so many boards of companies, we don't see female CEOs. So that, whether you like it or not, as a woman, it affects you because you start doubting yourself and thinking if you're going to be able to do this or to do that because you don't see other women like you who are doing it. But when you flip the coin, the other way of seeing it, and the narrative that I love so much, is that also we have the privilege of becoming pioneers, of breaking new ground, of becoming the first ones who are breaking those barriers. So my advice would be to take a leap of faith, take that leap of faith, step into the unknown, and dare to be first. Dare to be the first one in your family, in your school, in your university, in your work, because as I always say, every time you pioneer, you move the world forward. Every time you pioneer, you move the world forward. And Peter, we need armies of pioneers out there.
Absolutely. Gaby Natale, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
They can find me, my website, gabynatale.com, on social media at Gaby Natale, in all social platforms.
Gaby Natale, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for making this wonderful space for us.
Thank you.